Testing, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, now we got it. Okay, well, let's briefly start over, just do the roll call again, and then we'll continue. This is tonight's zoning board meeting of adjustment of Wednesday, June 15th, 2022.
Dr. Bloom, Ms. Avron, Dr. Blumenthal.
Here.
Mr. Burkle.
Here.
Ms. Campus. Here. Dr. Lateef.
Here.
Mr. Luciani.
Here.
Mr. Ofanatopoulos.
Here.
Ms. Perez. Here. Dr. Shaw.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and then say standing for a moment of silence to honor the police and military who've been wounded or killed in action. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Just as a point of information, this board is required by New Jersey law and case law, follows the rules that we have to follow. We are quasi-judicial. We only consider topics that have been officially noticed, and we will only be considering those topics that are on the published agenda. There was some newspaper article about some other topic being urging members of the public to come for a different application tonight. I fortunately don't see a large crowd. In any case, the only applications we're considering and will consider are those that are on tonight's agenda. With that, moving on to item 1, public hearing.
32 Apple Grove Drive, Robert Fanning, zoning board number 462, block 50, lot 58, in the R40B zone. Applicant seeks relief for the height of an existing garage, accessory building, or 18.2 feet, where 15 feet is the allowable height. Also seeking relief or coverage of 22.6%, where 15% is allowed.
Could you please introduce yourself?
Good evening, members of the board. My name is David Bendick. I'm an attorney. I'm here with my client, Robert Fanny, who seeks the relief as stated just previously. Along with us is our technical expert and the builder himself, Frank Martinez, in case there are any technical questions that the board may have for him.
And please note for the record that Valerie has arrived. Loretta, the escrow and notice all in order?
Yes, it's all in order.
Then just ask any members of the board or the audience, does anyone have any conflicts with the application or any concerns about this application? Seeing none?
No, but just one clarification on what you said, relieving it. You mentioned a garage. The structure is not a garage.
We'll get, just
Just wanted
hold
to make sure
on.
if that was on, it's not.
That we'll get into more than that in a moment. Okay.
David, just spell your last name for me.
B-E-N-D-I-K.
Okay, and with that, do you want to swear in the
Yeah,
app?
so we'll swear in your client as well as our professionals. Raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
Okay, just for the record, the applicant and Lonnie and Kate were sworn in.
Let me introduce Lonnie, our zoning officer, who you may have had contact with or not, and also Kate Keller, the board planner. I know Lonnie spent some time researching what's relevant, and Kate also. So let me turn to Lonnie from your perspective, what is the history here and what are the issues that the board needs to consider?
According to our tax map, this property is 1.16 acres, but according to our tax records, it's 0.962 acres. It is in the R40B zone. This lot and 34 Apple Grove are the only 2 lots that are in the R40B in that neighborhood. Everybody else is an R40B cluster or an R40A. The house was a reconstruction. It's not a subject of this variance. The matter is before this board because the applicant rebuilt the garage without permits, and in February he received a zoning violation from myself because the structure was 18 feet 2 inches high, which is in violation of ordinance 30-52C, where a maximum height of 15 feet is permitted, and it was, like I said, it was reconstructed without any zoning permits or construction permits. So that was a problem. The structure is also 1.5 feet from the right property line in the rear, and it's 2.5 feet from the property line in the front, where 40 feet is required in the R40B zone. The applicant is also requesting coverage of 22.6, where 15% is permitted. There is a problem. The existing gravel driveway encroaches on a 25-foot drainage easement according to his survey. However, it's a sanitary sewer easement on our tax map. Here, it's an easement nonetheless. So the applicant's application, the drawing indicates he wants to put a circular driveway in. This board doesn't have jurisdiction to allow him to encroach on an easement. He'll have to go to the governing body for that part of him. And the fence that's depicted on the survey is on another person's lot. So either he's going to have to get a zoning permit to move the fence back on his property or just take it down, because it encroaches quite a lot on lot 5710.
Yeah, so, Kate, do you want to further comment on the history? Yes, go ahead.
Record,
Go ahead.
Dr. Lonnie, so on the side yard and rear yard setback of the, it's 1.5 to the rear?
1.5, the structure is 1.5 feet in the back from the property line, and in the front, it's 2.5 feet. So it's kind of crooked.
Right? And it's 40 feet for both?
It's 40, it's a 40-foot setback from that property line.
Marty, those are both from the side yard.
Yeah, they're from the side yard.
The minimum is 1.5, but the other point is 2.5.
He rebuilt it.
Okay.
That's all.
You was just talking about the
Without a permit.
front and the back of the...
Yeah, of the structure
It's both. It's
itself.
one-
Yeah, it's not an even
Can I ask a question now?
setback.
Maybe this will be in the testimony, but from your perspective, Lon, the garage, when it was rebuilt, was moved closer to the rear?
No, it's always
It
been
was
in that
there.
spot, which is why I could not give him a permit to, not that they even asked, but I wouldn't be able to give him a permit for
Understood, but
that.
obviously, I'm assuming predating this gentleman's ownership, the garage was always that.
It's always, yeah, it's a
property
this
line.
this property,
What he did was he made the structure higher without a permit,
correct,
but it was always in that spot.
yes.
right? So,
Although the new structure, I think, is bigger.
Because I don't have any drawings of it, I don't know what the square footage of it is. No one in my office has been able to go in for inspections because there is no permit.
So Lonnie, this structure that's there, this development is not an old development.
This house was built, the original structure was built in 1873.
Oh, so this is one of the original
It's
farmhouses.
the original farmhouse, yes.
So that's been there since predating our zoning.
Absolutely. I went back as far as 1923 today. The only thing I did not do is go to the Monmouth County Clerk's office to get that deed. So
But
I did.
It's
quite
at
a-
least 1923 or older.
Yeah, it's definitely before 1986.
Yeah, it does.
Okay, so the house itself is a rebuild,
Yes,
and for that, they did get permits.
Yes.
And they are conforming with what needs to be done for
Correct.
just the house.
yes.
So issues here are this auxiliary building, whether it's may previously been a garage, is now whatever it's being called now. It is a separate structure from the house. It's at least in part on the footprint of a prior structure, but it has been rebuilt and its height does not conform and the setbacks don't conform.
Correct. The setbacks never conformed, but the height is, that's a new addition to this.
And then there's the request for an increased coverage to permit a circular driveway, but that has problems because of the easements.
Correct. And I believe he also wants a swimming pool. That's where the extra coverage comes in. He wants a swimming pool, a patio, and he wants to pave the driveway. Right now, the driveway is gravel. He
So
wants
it's a
to pave
different
that
coverage.
driveway, so that's the increase in coverage. But I wouldn't, even if you guys grant that, I can't give him a permit because I need governing body approval
He's
for
on
the
the easement.
encroachment on the easement. Whether it's a drainage easement or a sanitary sewer easement, doesn't matter.
So should he have gone to the town first before us?
This was this was a pre-existing condition. I mean, he's asking for coverage as an added-on thing. None of this has happened yet. So if he doesn't get the coverage variance, he's got to leave the driveway stone, which is a pre-existing condition.
Okay, but in the previously existing driveway on the side of the property crossed the easement, and there
Correct.
wasn't any permission for that,
Well,
that we know of.
I believe at the time the driveway was installed, there was no such thing as sewer. So they put the easement in, I believe, when the Apple Grove, when Laurel Acres was formed in the 90s.
Oh, so that the easement came later.
Yes,
So the easement went over the driveway.
yes, exactly. But in this new, if he wants the circular driveway, the driveway will now go over the easement.
So
So-
there's an existing crossing, which
Yes.
might have been documented in terms of easements and permissions, but it exists, but the additional driveway would be additional encroachment, if I may use that word.
Correct, correct.
Okay,
But the driveway to the side,
That was the original driveway when this house was constructed in the 1800s. It is gravel, and the easement came after that. So when they put Laurel Acres in the 90s, the sewer hookups were there, and that's why I'm not sure if it's a drainage easement or a sanitary sewer easement, because I have two different,
I thought the easement was on the circular drive.
that's what he wants to put in. That's
This
not
is
constructed yet.
This is not here. This is only here.
Dave, any chance you have a
Okay.
copy of
See,
the...
look, you see the easement? It's going right across the whole thing.
Oh,
It's based on the
Yeah.
plat for
25
Laurel
easement.
Estates. It is sanitary sewer. They're both treated the same way by the township, but just for the record, yeah, and then the plan should be, the survey should be for that.
Okay.
State that.
When you purchased the home, was the easement already there? The sewage easement? Because I would have thought when you bought it, that would have been brought out that there is a sewage easement already there.
What I was aware of, in front of the property, there was a hump that, and like a dirt drive, or actually maybe it was gravel, that looked like it went all the way to Laurel Avenue. This is the second home off of Laurel Avenue. So, and because of the age of the home, I thought this was the driveway back when the home first was on Laurel Avenue. So
that is also shown on the drawing, sort of like there's a little front porch leading to the front door, and just below that it says 16-foot wide access easement. That's to the old driveway that goes out to Laurel.
Correct. When this was 717 South Laurel Avenue, when Ms. Batowski owned it, she purchased 6,500 feet of property so she could get frontage on Apple Grove, because she, back in 2004, the access was dangerous for her to get out of, and for Mr. and Mrs. Allmiller, who lived next door. So
Okay,
both
it
of them
was.
changed their address. It became 34 Apple Grove and 32 Apple Grove.
Where they had previously had this access easement going through lot 59, which has frontage on Laurel.
On Laurel Avenue.
right here.
So until Apple Grove was extended here,
This was
that
all one
access
lot.
easement was
We divided it so they could come on here.
in and out.
oh, okay.
So that's an easement to the benefit of the homeowner,
Correct.
rather than the sewage easement is to the benefit of the township. So they're in a different legal status
Correct.
Yeah, but there's actually a sewer line going underneath.
in the
Correct.
sewer.
Yeah, so it's not that it's proposed, it's there.
Yeah.
Right.
So, Lonnie, just because it's so, just for the record, my resolution, the sewer easement goes under the access easement or the drainage easement?
It's below,
There's no drainage
there's no drainage easement.
easement.
It is,
That is
it
a
is,
sewer
it is a
So
sewer
he calls
easement.
it a
And it's
drainage.
at,
It's mislabeled.
it's mislabeled on the survey.
Yeah, see, this is not drainage, it's sewer.
Kate, would you care to add anything to what's,
No, I mean, Lonnie covered it very thoroughly. It's a complicated history of this site because it's adjacent to a subdivision, but was not part of the subdivision, but did benefit in some ways from the subdivision. So, the thing is that this was a historic property, or, you know, it historically was developed. You know, we're not sure exactly when the pre-existing garage was built, at least 1920. We're not sure when the driveway, you know, along that side was constructed. It may have been before, or probably was before even that property was extended there, or before the easement was granted. But that's only referring to the driveway that's along the northerly, is that the northerly? Westerly property line. The applicant is proposing now the large circular driveway in the front yard, which does cross the drainage, sanitary sewer easement. There is no drainage easement on the property. So I think, you know, in terms of testimony, the applicant, you know, just wants to talk about what they're proposing here, what the use of the garage, or excuse me, the structure that's on the site of the former garage will be if it was extended, if it was enlarged in any way from the previous structure, like if they increase the footprint, increase the height, etc. You know, just justification for any of the coverage variances.
Okay, one other thing here is that the lot, whatever the correct number is, it's approximately 1 acre, but the zone it's in is R40B, which is 2.5 acre.
Yes.
So it's a significantly undersized lot, and there's no previously existing variance to document that?
No.
As far as, you know, I think what both of us could tell is that this lot was in existence.
Well, probably predated the zone.
It predated the zone, exactly.
It was there before it became an R40 zone.
Yes.
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 So it's a pre-existing, but if we grant anything documenting that this fact should be part of the record.
Right.
Right, but now the sewer, where that easement goes, if now there's nothing there but dirt, but if there was asphalt there and the town needed to get to that sewer line, they would dig everything up and rip it all out, right?
We can't grant that.
No, I'm not saying we're
Right,
granting it,
yes,
I'm just
yes.
asking, that's what would have to
Yes,
happen.
if there was a break in a line or something, our contractor would have to come in and they would have to break up his driveway.
Break it up and not replace it.
Yeah, that would be the chance, and that's probably, being that I do this frequently, that would probably be a stipulation of what would be in the agreement if the governing body did agree to allow a driveway there, that if there is a break or a repair necessary, that the township would not be responsible to replace the driveway. That's just normal
Right.
protocol.
But that's probably maybe a reason why the other driveway is gravel. So maybe that person put it down, put gravel for that reason. I know, we're just
150 years ago-
speculating.
I can't
150
speculate
years
to
ago,
that.
you didn't pave driveways.
Right.
Yeah, but there's
And
other
in
people
some
that
towns,
live
you
there.
still don't, you know,
Yeah.
in some towns, you still don't pave driveways, so, you know,
I
maybe
mean,
it was the charm of
This
the,
was a pre-existing lot, was not part of the other subdivisions, so it had its own history.
correct. And it has an old history, so,
Mhm.
Yeah, but it looks like there's nothing that looks old about it anymore from these pictures that I'm looking at.
no, it was a reconstruction. He bought the lot, he reconstructed the house.
Would you like to comment or address the situation from your perspective?
Well, I would defer to my client, who is knowledgeable from his beginning of his research before he purchased the property, to answer the questions of this honorable board.
Go ahead.
So there were a number of things that I could help clarify. So I think someone had mentioned, has the ancillary structure changed in size or location? And Lonnie said that she could not confirm whether or not it has. I have the survey before any renovations were done. We also have where it is, so it's the exact same coverage of land or footprint. However, it has a bit of an overhang or an awning to catch yourself from being out of the rain. So actually the actual four walls of the structure are smaller on the left-hand side. So the structure itself, if you're, from a bird's eye view, is spot on identical. However, if you're looking at it face on, there's coverage on the left-hand side, to be out of the rain in the backyard.
Is that considered coverage, Lonnie?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's part of the
Yeah.
building, it's part of the
Yes.
structure.
Okay, and would we consider that overhang, that patio, whatever you're going to call it, would that be considered part of the coverage then?
Yes,
Yep.
And should be considered part of the structure?
correct.
So the footprint is enlarged in that?
No, it is the exact same. That's the point I was trying to make. So the foresight, maybe I'm saying it wrong, sorry,
The roof line
is
extends
identical.
under your old footprint, but your
Okay.
walls are moved in
Correct.
for whatever purpose you did there. That's how I
That's correct.
understood you should.
If I may, the old structure had that part where that's open now was enclosed. Now it's an open air, but it still has a roof, it still counts as part of the coverage. It's just not closed in.
Okay, but it's the same as it was before.
Correct.
The footprint?
The full-
The footprint, not the look of it.
And it was
No.
constructed in the same locations? So, okay.
But without permits?
So Lonnie, again, what triggered this whole thing? He came for a pool permit?
No, my
No.
building inspector went out to do ongoing inspections on the house and was like, hey, the garage is up and it's redone. And then, he came back and talked to me and I was like, there's no permit for it. So that's how this whole thing got started.
Okay. I hope the applicant's going to address that.
Sure. So it was a dilapidated structure. The woman actually, in the listing when I purchased the home, it said, you're not allowed to enter, right? It was jokes made that I can't believe this woman is parking her car near there. But it was a really nice, it went with the feel of what I was trying to do, right? A modern farmhouse type look. So I said, I want to rehab this. As we started to rehab, we found rot on the far left-hand side. I knew about the rot, but I didn't know to what degree. As we started rehabbing, and we said, well, what are we going to do here? How are we going to fix this? It was just more and more issues that at some point it looked like this was the right approach. As we did that fix, I was under the impression that the pitch of the roof that we were doing would make it stronger, right? I have 8 and 4-year-old kids, and we thought that this was what to do.
But why didn't you apply for a permit?
That's my question.
I thought I have permits, and I was rehabbing there, and I just went about it. I don't do this for a living.
You built it yourself, or did your contractor do this? The work?
I could say that this was my first foray into doing things. So I have 2 left arms. I can't do anything myself, so I have a contractor. He works on it, but I'm making decisions as we did it. I'm saying, hey, can we make it look like this, or can we do this? When I'm told, hey, a roof line situated in this manner is going to be stronger, I'm the one saying that would be great. That respectfully, I'm trying to go a little bit above whatever the norm is.
I get everything you're saying, but what I'm trying to determine is, it's between you and the contractor. Both of you, if you had a contractor, ignore this idea that you need a permit, or even discuss it. Hey, maybe we should find out if we're going to get a permit. We're going to build this building new. Neither of you discussed it and thought that you needed to do it.
You could see the difference in the home that was there to now. The amount I've spent on permits and how many are permits, I just lost track of what is a permit for what. Matter of fact, I actually owe a couple of dollars for the generator permit. I didn't keep track of what needed permits and for what.
So you yourself or the contractor applied for the permits?
I believe I applied for the permits.
So to what extent, Lonnie, did you explain to the applicant
Is that your contractor?
Yes.
Okay.
what permits existed and what was needed? And
He got a permit for the reconstruction of the house and a generator. That was it.
Because I think obviously, I can only speak for myself, you're a homeowner, we want to help you. I just think we're trying to wrap our head around the idea that you want a variance for something that you should have gotten a permit for, and we're trying to understand really how it happened that you didn't get that permit. So we're trying to get an answer that makes us understand what went on. So maybe it's your contractor who's going to fall on the sword here, I don't know. We're trying to understand, you knew enough to know that you needed a permit for everything else that you did, but now you want us to say, well, I didn't realize, or I forgot, or I didn't know, so we're just trying to really.
And moreover, it doesn't meet the height requirement.
Right, well, of course, that's all part of it.
But if we
Yeah.
understood, I guess, why somebody did what they did, then it's already built. So either we're going to give them the variance to rip it down, so it would help us to understand how this occurred, that he has built something without the proper permit. So I'm looking for you to give me an answer that I can understand as to how this mess up occurred.
Sure. Initially, I didn't think it was a mess up because if you saw, one of the things that I was saying with, conviction is that it is the exact same size that was there, right? I was adamant about as we were rehabbing in the construction, I thought when you buy something that's already there, you can do what you like
The
as long.
contractor knows that you need a permit to breathe in the state of New Jersey.
Yeah.
So he knows.
Unless this is his first job doing your house, maybe I'd give him some leeway, but I'm sure he's built before, and to me, there's no excuse for a contractor that's a professional with a license in New Jersey to claim he didn't think he needed a permit to do that kind of work.
I can't speak to that, except I was the
not
one
asking you.
driving the rot, and like I said, when you're in there and you see what shape it's in, and I'm saying, this is what I want, and you go in there and you take something out and it's falling apart, and then you do a little bit more, and you do a little bit more, the next thing you know, it looks like the picture that you said, and
Ralph,
I'm apologetic.
at this point, do we want to get the contractor up at this point?
Well,
I don't know what he's going to tell us.
Well, someone needs to explain to us how come they got built without a permit, so.
That's the applicant, they're his attorney responsibility to figure out who's going to testify to what and how, and if that would be if you feel that's going to be helpful or not.
I think it's my responsibility.
I'm going to ask our contractor to come up and speak to you and address this issue.
Fine.
I have to swear him in when he's ready. You swear to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, I do.
And just state and spell your name for the record.
With your permission, I'm just going to pull another chair up.
Sure.
My name is Frank Martinez, Martines.
And what's the name of your business?
Name of the business is Alpine Brook Contracting, LLC.
Credentials.
What are your credentials as a builder?
I've been a contractor for probably almost 50 years. And I have done renovations, additions, new construction, light commercial, and custom homes.
Would you attempt to address the issue about permits that's been on the table here?
Yeah, yes, I do. You're absolutely right. It should have had permits. What happened was, what started out as a facelift, what I call a facelift, with doing minor repairs, escalated as we were going on to the job. There's no excuses to say that we should have known, we should have gotten permits, absolutely, but as I said, the main priority was the house and other things that we were working on at the house. These other easements came up, and the size of the house, not the size of the house, the things that are involved with building a new construction house were there. So this became a secondary situation, but we absolutely should have had permits. I didn't, when Lonnie contacted me and when I spoke to Steve Winters, we started the permit process right away, what had to be done to get the permit for the job. So we weren't trying to avoid anything. It just, even to this day, it's sort of second on the list as opposed to what the priorities of the house.
Lonnie?
You didn't submit permits for this yet,
Well, yeah, I filled out the
because
job.
you didn't fill out a zoning permit, and you didn't fill out a jacket because it's too tall, and we told you you couldn't have a permit because now it's too big. You had a choice to take the roof off and make it 15 feet, or come before the board and get a variance.
Right.
But we have no permit package in construction for this structure.
Well, yeah, the permit package was submitted. The only thing was they didn't want to, not that they said I couldn't use my new construction license. I needed a HIC license for that. And I'm waiting for the HIC license.
But I think what Lonnie is saying, since it was not a conforming structure,
I couldn't
she
give
could
you-
not accept it or issue a
But
permit.
it's the big difference of not accepting it and not submitting it.
Well, I
It was
put it this
submitted.
way, Frank, I've never seen it. So if it's in the construction office, I would have seen it. Maybe I'll talk to Dawn tomorrow and find out where it's at, but if that,
You could talk to Steve, because I gave it to Steve, I handed it to him.
Is that also correct? You would not accept the permit from him because he's a builder of new construction as opposed
that's
to
not
a
my,
home
that's
improvement
not,
contractor?
that's a construction thing.
Okay.
That's not a zoning thing, that's a construction. Construction, you have to have a certain license. That's not my thing.
Yeah, I mean, just from the perspective of building it on the same, the same footprint, is that it appears the applicant has testified that he did. And as we did mention, this is a pre-existing non-conformity, and so if he had submitted a permit in a timely fashion and it was the height that was permitted by ordinance, 15 versus 18, this would have been considered a pre-existing non-conforming structure, just a reconstruction of a pre-existing non-conforming structure. But, because nothing was submitted, the office couldn't verify that, and then they're also submitting for a higher height. So that's the board's consideration tonight, is not so much the setback, but
Right,
the
it's-
overall structure that's already been constructed. The variance relief tonight is the height. And I think, but the setback, is something that you take the height into account with, or this, when you're evaluating the height of a structure, you take the setback into account, and it is a foot and a half from the property line.
I ask why do we have a 15-foot height restriction? But so that,
I
understand.
can just speak generally. It's just so accessory buildings don't crowd out principal buildings. It's so that people don't build two-story garages, or it also, in some cases, that's because you want to prevent people from having, sort of like a second home in it or anything. But in general, it's also just visual in nature, where if you're in a neighborhood and if it's 30, if you're allowed to build an accessory the same size as your home, then, that can get out of control very quickly. So that's why it's regulated this way.
Strangely enough, Mrs. Campus, if the secondary building was attached with a breezeway, they could have a 35-foot height restriction limit, and also no limit on the square footage if it was connected with the house. But as a secondary building, it's a 15-foot height limit. So it's very bizarre, because you could actually connect this building to the home. We'd have to submit plans for that, and then there would be no restriction on the height, the 35-foot height restriction, not 15. And no restriction on the square footage, as long as you're under the coverage of the coverage limitation.
I heard testimony that it was raised to make it stronger. There was no way to make that roof stronger, keeping it at 15?
We don't, excuse me, don't mean to interrupt. I'm not saying it wasn't 15, but we don't know the height. Like I said, we're fixing it, and as we're going, we're looking, I will tell you, the pitch itself is steeper. Now, the structure that was there, in my opinion, was, it's not an opinion, it was wider as far as what's encapsulated. And I thought, hey, I'm making it a steeper roof, it's stronger. That's how I look. Steeper doesn't necessarily mean higher. It turns out I'm 3.2 feet higher.
Yeah, and I would say just from looking at photographs of the prior structure, that I can't say if it was under 15 feet, but this one does appear to be taller than what was there before.
But-
In New Jersey, is there a standard for accessory buildings in terms of height?
Yep,
No, every municipality can set their own.
yeah.
And it's not, and it can vary from zone to zone.
I'm just curious, in your experience as a contractor, have you experienced these restrictions?
Yes, as I believe Mrs. Blumenthal just said, every zone, every township has their own. Rumson, Middletown have different restrictions. Some of them have higher limits, and very few of them have lower limits, but some of them do have higher limits.
So
Usually-
working within those towns, you did inquire
Right.
about the height.
Right.
So then, on this particular job.
Yeah.
That
But
increase should
But,
also.
but again, what Robert was trying to explain with the existing structure that was closed in, that was 22 feet wide, or whatever it was, I think it was actually about 30-something feet wide. So that roof that spanned that distance is now spanning a shorter distance. And it is higher, but it appears to be higher. And I don't know the actual height of the previous building. I do know that that's what contributed to the walls bowing out. The flatter the roof, the more snow load, the better chance it has of pushing out a frame building. The restrictions weren't as prevalent back then with collar ties and things to hold the building together, and it started to bow out. And there was a lot of on-the-fly thinking about tightening up and strengthening it, which is what was done. The beams that will go all the way across, particularly just to hold the walls together. So.
So there was a lot of discussion to reinforce everything, because the existing structure really didn't have the integrity that it needed.
Yeah, it was actually very dangerous. I was shocked that the woman was an older woman who lived there, close to 80, and she actually went in and out of that thing every day.
So what part of this structure is the original structure? What wall?
Now?
Yeah.
Now nothing.
So in other words, you brought the old structure down to the ground and
No,
rebuilt it
what
from
happened-
scratch up?
No, what happened was we actually did it a wall at a time pretty much. It wasn't the first time that's happened to me. It happened in another town where you try to replace a wall and you think you're going to save the others, and then they don't work out and this doesn't work out. And you would have been better off just knocking the whole doggone thing down.
But that's what you ended up having here. There's no existing walls. Every wall is brand new.
Big difference is the house, we knew we were demoing the house. We demoed it at one time. And this structure wasn't like that, so it was the intent of the job, how it started out.
Did you consider reducing the footprint of this structure in order to, make the roof line appropriate for safety purposes without going above the ordinance limits?
Not really, because that was in place. The size of the foundation was in place, so we didn't think about doing that, no.
Let me bring up a different topic. The coverage. You're seeking a coverage variance for a variety of reasons. The circular driveway is one, the pool, the patio, all of that adds up to a coverage that is greater than what is permitted by the ordinance. We did get a letter from the Environmental Commission recommending that not be granted. I'll expand on that. This property is in the Mahoras-Wakeake watershed. At the back of the property, the top on the drawing is a little called a brook. It's a stream which flows toward Laurel Avenue, goes under Laurel in a culvert, and then feeds directly into the Mahoras-Wakeake. The Mahoras-Wakeake then goes further north toward Raritan Bay along Palmer Avenue. If you've lived in Holmdel any length of time, you've heard about flooding on Palmer Avenue, and it's been a nightmare.
Right, yes.
The town, Rutgers did a study on that watershed, and they finished what they're doing, and the township has engaged an engineering firm to look at flooding town-wide. But the Rutgers preliminary conclusion was that one of the reasons for the flooding is there's too much coverage in the upstream areas. You're proposing to increase the coverage on this property, which feeds into the Mahoras. And I can guess that that's one of the reasons why the Environmental Commission is recommending not to permit any increased coverage.
Can I comment on that?
Sure.
Can I ask a question first? I Google Earth this, so there's a structure here, which I'm assuming is the garage, the old garage.
And for the sake of moving this along, it's not a garage, right? A vehicle can't fit in there. It's two doors that open like this.
It's a
Just to be
6 foot
clear.
wide door. It's not wide enough for a garage door.
The reason we keep referring to it is that's what it's called on the survey that you see.
Yeah, I realize
And
that. Well, back then it
that's
was.
all that the board really sees, so to them it was a garage.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Well, all right, the structure here can you see that part?
Oh,
Is that it? you know how high the other building was? So you
Well,
definitely.
this picture is of the current
Yeah, I understand,
building.
and this is the old.
That's the current,
this
yes,
is the
that's-
old one here, this dilapidated structure here,
Oh.
is the old one, I see it. I'm trying to see because, I mean, that roof doesn't look small. It's hard to get a height fix on it, obviously, from a picture.
Well,
It
it's
was
it's
falling-
wide, but it's wide, but
And it was falling down, like I said, we were told that we weren't even allowed to go in there. And I thought, oh, okay, I'm gonna have to put a new roof, and I'll have to do this. And it just became larger and larger as we went.
Because there's a first story, and then it goes up on a slant, right? So I'm
Correct.
just trying to see how high the other existing roof was. So we're saying it's 15, but nobody knows, right?
We're saying that 15 is the permitted in
It
this.
could have, and so you are saying that you in fact did increase the height from the old roof to the new roof?
well, what we're saying is that the height of this new roof is higher than what's permitted. Nobody knows exactly the height of the old roof.
Well, what you do know though is there was a roof there.
Yes.
Did you make it taller when you were working on it?
We increased the pitch, because that makes
Yeah,
it
but which,
stronger.
makes it
yeah, but
higher.
yes, it does make it taller. It absolutely does make it taller, but again, the size of the structure that was there,
Yeah, you're not understanding my point.
Yeah.
So what
Well-
I'm trying to figure out is what your pre-existing roof size was to see whether you already had a pre-existing non-conforming use for the height and whether in fact you made it higher. or not.
Does
This-
anyone measure the height?
18 feet
This-
before, and it's still 18 feet, and it was like that from the 1800s, it's a pre-existing non-conforming use. Do you understand what I'm trying to figure out?
right, yes.
But they don't know, and there's nothing
I
in
was just going
writing.
to say that that building was clearly way more than 100 years
So how
old.
much higher do you think you made the roof when you increased the pitch?
Probably the end unit was probably about 2 feet higher at least. For some reason, I'm remembering 16 feet. I would say it's probably about 2 feet higher than what it was.
For the record, Judge Valley, what were you looking at, so we can just start?
Google Earth.
Google Earth, okay.
Has anyone measured the height of the current building?
Yes. And that's where Lonnie said it was 18.2 feet.
And that's following our definition of height.
Right.
Correct.
Could I finish commenting on
Sure.
you mentioned the watershed areas. That easement that everybody brought up before crosses all the lots, the lot to the left of this house, the lot to the right of that house. They all have paved driveways, of course, because they need access to their houses.
And circular.
And
next door neighbor has
and
a
circular
paved
driveways. So-
driveway right next
so
to me
the
on the
po-
right-hand side.
The point was when I've actually worked on 3 different jobs over the years in 3 different townships where the municipalities, whether it was the county or the towns, did improvements on roads where roads were moved and land was never either properly assigned to the lots and it surfaced later, much like this, one in Linkruff, one in West Long Branch, and now this one here, where the reason why Lonnie said the surveys were showing .92 is when they added that land to the lot, it was never, the square footage was never added. So that, all of the houses in Laurel Acres are 1 acre zones, which means anywhere between 1.25, 1.5 acres. And this lot conforms to that size, but the zoning was never changed. So what happens now is this lot is still classified R40B, but the coverage that Mr. Fanny is requesting is less than the R40A amounts. But as it turns out, because it's R40B, that's why it's exceeding it. But we're not doing anything any different than any of the other lots in the whole neighborhood in terms of coverage. His coverage, when you're mentioning the pool and the patio, the paver patio is only half coverage. Walkways are only half coverage. There's no coverage for pool, the water of a pool, there's no coverage. He's actually just within his limits with those things without a paved U-shaped driveway. So, but again, as I said, the U-shaped driveways, if you drive down Apple Grove Drive, are very, very common throughout the whole including this side of the street where the
I
easements are.
don't believe what you said was accurate in terms of the rest of the zone, right? This is a 2.5 acre, the subdivision is 2.5
No,
acres.
it's
No.
cluster.
No,
It's
cluster.
Oh, it's
So
just
either,
one
Yeah.
just,
Yeah,
yeah,
well-
so just a couple of things here. First is that, the sanitary sewer easement does not it does extend from Laurel Avenue across lot 59, which is also not part of the subdivision cluster. It does not extend across the frontage of any of the other lots. It does what, you know, these easements are supposed to do typically when they're designed, which is they kind of go down the side property, they cut through, you know, parts of the lot that are less likely to be developed. So I can't speak to, yes, and the applicant, you know, they're correct that there are circular driveways on the adjacent lots, which are 57.10, which is part of the subdivision, and 59, which is another historic lot, let's call it that. That's not part of the subdivision. I can't speak, you know, I will say that lot 59 is much larger than this lot. It does conform to the R40B zone requirements that it is within. I can't speak to how the driveway was put across the easement or when that happened or whether that got approval, but I will say that it's a different situation there because the lot is much larger and conforms to R40B zone. This lot, this is a classic pre-existing non-conforming condition. This is a small lot that was, you know, developed a long time before the subdivision was. It was included in the zoning, but it's not technically included in the cluster requirements. So the pre-existing nonconformity here is that the lot is smaller than the 2.5 acres that's required. It's about 1 1/4, 1.2. That does include the strip that was given. And you know, the applicant's proofs for the record for, you know, because there's two things here. One is developing within the sanitary sewer easement. And we can't speak to what happened before, but I will say to this board is that the township, we reconfigured, so we revised some of the easement procedures about 1.5 years ago, I think, where that if an applicant does decide that they want to put something in an easement and it triggers a zoning board application or planning board application, whichever it may be, this board can make that determination, and they can't go to the township committee unless they get a determination from this board. So that does not mean this board is under no obligation to approve it, but the procedure would be to come here, and then if they request it from the township committee, to go there next.
If the driveway was removed from the application, would they still be over their lot coverage?
I can't say for sure. It would be close. It would either be no, or it would be very minimally over, because they have the driveway, what do they have it? It's 4985 square feet, and 11,000 is their total. 11,000, what is it? 11,161 is their total lot coverage. So they have the driveway area, and this does include the part to the right side of the house as well, but the majority of it is a circular driveway. So that's taking up almost half of their total proposed impervious coverage. So, you know, it would really benefit in two ways here if that were either to be eliminated or reduced, and that, you know, just speaking from a factual perspective as far as the variances are concerned.
Is your client willing to remove that from his application, driveway?
The paving of the existing driveway?
No, the circular driveway.
Am I willing to? It's appearing like I don't really have much of a choice, so of course, but ideally, there's 7 homes with a circular driveway. I was unaware that the easement does not continue, but when you come down the street, seeing 7 people with a circular driveway, you would want one too. The home that I've been in, we moved it right across the street, practically. I was in Mount Drive. Long story short, I have a circular driveway and it has its benefits. So would I want one? Yes. Am I willing to take that off? Sure.
Yeah, I mean, just from the planning perspective or the board's consideration, the other lots, they might be similar in size, but they were all developed as part of a cohesive cluster pattern that also set aside, you know, open space areas and drainage areas and ways that, you know, in complying with the cluster requirements, you make up for the extra impervious coverage by dedicating open space areas to the township. And so that's the distinction here. You know, if you're just driving down the road, you don't always know the history of this site, but it does stand.
This lot has a unique history.
Yeah,
Is-
absolutely.
And so,
you know, and this all went down much before you purchased
Yes,
the property.
absolutely.
So, you know, there's some, you know, it stands alone, but, you know, we're just trying to work within the
So,
ordinance.
knowing the composition of this board as I do, like, I can anticipate how other, I've never built before, how other board members might feel. What I would tell you is, while I'm sure you're not happy that you didn't go for the permit, I'm certainly not going to vote to make it your file. So I would personally be inclined to grant, to vote in favor of a variance for that. And I believe that every person in Holmdel is entitled to a pool if they want one. So I would certainly be inclined to vote in favor of allowing you to put in the pool and the patio. But knowing that your lot coverage, and particularly in light of the recommendations in the environmental committee might trouble other people on the board, and your application is much closer to meeting lot coverage requirements if the circular driveway is removed. So that's why I made the suggestion that.
And if I may, I'd say this, right? I've been in this town since 1996. I love it here. I would not stay if I knew I had to have a gravel driveway, right? The circular driveway, like I said, there's benefits. I would like one. If you're telling me I can't, I'd say, you know, but if you said because of my coverage, I cannot have a paved driveway, I don't want to drive on a gravel. I mean, it's a modern farmhouse, okay, but the key word is modern. I need a paved driveway, right? So I guess looking
I
at...
understand that. I would want one if I were you as well. So again, speaking only for myself, I could see that with your understanding that if we were to agree to that, if it had to come up for some reason, you're going to rip your driveway up. Right, you understand?
I understand, and quite frankly, I do understand if I can't do I disagree, but I understand the circular driveway component. The coverage, I guess I'm still at a loss of how my R40B home, and if you look at the survey and the color, I'm not doing anything, I'm not putting a basketball court and a pool and concrete everywhere. It's actually a pretty modest setup how I'm structuring it. I just don't meet that coverage. So again, if I'm adding too much confusion, I don't need the circular driveway, but every other component that you see on the survey or that I've requested is something I would like.
Excuse me, one question. Do we know how much you are exceeding the impervious coverage by adding the circular driveway?
No.
7.6%.
Oh, who knows?
We don't have there's a calculation on the plan for driveway, and that's the 4,984 figure. That includes both the new paved area of the existing driveway and the area in front of the attached garage of the house. But that also includes the large circular driveway. And so, you know, without measuring it, without having something scaled in front of me, I can't say what exactly that would be, but it looks like it would bring the applicant, if not under, into much closer conformity with the 15% that's permitted.
Yeah.
So, like, this is just, you know, just as an example, this is, you know, not for the record, just offhand. It looks like it could potentially take it from like 22 to 16 or 17, maybe. And that's keeping the paved driveway, the pool in the backyard, etc.
So just only deleting the circular driveway, so it wouldn't exist.
Dr. Latif, I happen to do a rough calculation, the U-shaped driveway, just a U-shape, leaving the side paved as it is about 2,500 square feet, just a U. I didn't break down to what percentage it makes of the whole.
That's about half of the total driveway.
About half, right,
yeah.
roughly about half of the, a little less than half of the total driveway would be, or actually about the half of the driveway would be the U-shape.
Lonnie, can you
So
do
if
the
that helps
math?
you in any way.
Unless she's already doing it.
About 17.2, 17, yeah, 0.5.
Yep.
So let me say a few things. I've been on this board for many years, and I've seen all sorts of things happen, from pools being placed in the wrong place and claiming they didn't know that it was in the wrong place.
Yeah.
We haven't really ever made anybody rip out a pool and put it in the right place. But what's disturbing to me is that you didn't get a permit. Regardless of all your reasoning that you mentioned, that's disturbing to me because this could have been prevented, the height part of it. What also disturbs me is I don't know if those two folks are neighbors back there that are willing to say, hey, I don't want to have an 18-foot structure at 1.5 feet from my property line. 15 I can get away with, but 18 is too high. So it bothers me that I don't know if I want to vote yes for this because of that. No, let me just keep going. Okay, so the height part could be, I might feel the way Valerie did and let it go, but the other part is the coverage, which is excessive. And we don't have the right to tell you, like Valerie said, you cannot do that. We don't say that. We vote on what you put in front of us. So if you say to me, that's what I want to put in front of you, we have a choice, yes or no. So we can't tell you, don't put the circular driveway. We're just telling you that maybe you would get voted yes if it wasn't there, but we're not telling you that. I want to make that clear for the record. So whatever you can do to mitigate one issue, to make the other one more palatable, is how you have to look at it, and that's how I look at it. So if the lot became more conforming with coverage, then there's more of a reason for us to say, okay, you made a mistake, you didn't get a permit, maybe we'll let it slide, provided there's no neighbors out there that are going to be saying, hey, why did you let it go 18 feet high? We'll find out later when we give them the opportunity to speak. So to me, along Valerie's lines, if you can cut even that little tail piece going to the back to what's labeled on the plans as a garage, even if you cut that part out and just leave the driveway going into the garage area, that might bring you almost to conforming.
I understand what you're saying, yeah, that
And
part-
then maybe I would say, you know what, I'm not going to tell the contractor to take 3 feet off the roof, because we would just say no, and you would have no choice but to do that. Otherwise, you're not going to get your permits and COs and the rest of that. So I just want to clear that up. It's not us saying no, it's you deciding whether you want to reapply, in front of us without that circular driveway.
Understood.
To make it more conforming, to make it more, allowing us more to give it to you, the building that's 18 foot high.
And I appreciate what you're saying about making it more palatable. I would like to keep the driveway going towards, or some type of coverage, doesn't even have to be asphalt, to that barn, just so for feet getting wet as I step inside. The circular driveway, I understand that point very well. And then as far as the neighbors are concerned, I don't know if this is admissible, but we are quite friendly on both sides, left and right. If I put them on speakerphone and they said that they absolutely love the barn right now, would that do you anything? I mean, I can
Yeah,
tell
but
you
it's
the
not
name.
acceptable, because we don't know who we're
I
talking
did, I
to.
Yeah,
figured as much.
it's, I mean,
They were noticed.
they were noticed.
They could show, but they were rejected.
We will reach a point where we will then ask if there are many members of the public or neighbors or whatever who are present who wish to comment, and that would be their opportunity to say, I love it, I hate it, or whatever. So there is part of this process, certainly to get input from them or any member of the public.
Actually, what you just said, if that area that you're talking about, that little spillback that goes to the barn, was done as a walkway.
As a what?
As a
Walkway.
walkway instead
That would
of,
cut the coverage even
that
more.
would cut the coverage, and it also would be, and if that was a paver and it was a walkway, whereas it's not part of the driveway.
50% on walkways.
Besides it being smaller, then it would be half the coverage also.
So now you're on my page. Now you're getting it.
Is that the rear of the house?
Not willing.
It
Might not
that
be
we
the
need you to amend
It is.
your
This is the front.
application now.
The rear would
That's
be
what
later.
you're
That can be done
willing
here.
to do. Right
Maybe
now,
not that
you can
piece.
just tell us that
Should ask Lonnie.
your attorney can tell us that you're amending your application
Oh, I know my ruler.
to
I'm looking for my ruler, my
remove
tape.
the circular driveway and to have that walkway in the rear be a.
That door is 6 feet. If you had a 6-foot walkway,
something
shrink that
pervious,
down.
Right, so pavers,
Or
gravel.
semi-pervious, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what you would
Pavers,
in
or 50%.
hypothesizing, you might want the main part of the driveway leading up to the garage to be paved.
Right.
But then beyond that, and heading to the new barn, whatever you want to
Paver
call
walkway.
it, if that were narrower, if it were pavers, which are pervious, that would definitely reduce the coverage, and you could get you down to 15.
Right, very close to it. So then you're only coming in here for 18 foot versus 15. Because the pre-existing 1.5, 2.5, whatever
Well, there's a
was
little
there.
more, because we need to document the fact that it's an undersized lot. We need to document and record the fact that the setback, that new structure is only 2 feet away from the sideline, so that going forward, all of these variances, deviations, whatever word you want to use, are properly recorded so that somebody buys the house from you 10 years from now, 100 years from now, the record clearly reflects what's been approved.
Which, by the way, we actually did meet the side setbacks. The normal setbacks for the R48 is 25. This is 40, and if you look at that, we just made it on the one side 40.65 and 46.13 on the other side.
For the house.
So,
The house is conforming.
yeah, we tried, and that was done on purpose because the house is only really 59 feet wide, plus that side piece of porch. So, you know, it could have been larger, but we try to meet, but you make a valid point with that. That's a lot of space by cutting, you literally would be cutting that paved area in half, and then be cutting it another in half with pavers as opposed to asphalt or something like that.
But now, there's no pool, there's no,
Yeah, but the pool's not.
no,
No,
but I'm saying there's no
Pool's-
pool, there's no coverage right now. I will then
But the
be signing up.
calculation
Isn't the
includes the
calculation
pool.
Includes everything.
Yeah,
No, I'm saying, but then I'm signing up to have only pavers, right? I cannot look
No.
for any other coverage.
No, not
Oh.
necessarily in the pool.
Oh.
You have the room on the pool.
Okay.
So
The pool is in the calculation.
It's just a U.
We're basing this based on what.
In other words, what we see in this plan is all we're going to see,
Remember I told you.
and that's what we're approving. So if you have to put a doghouse in there, theoretically, that's additional coverage. So you can't add anything else on here without coming back and telling us why you want to add more items.
But right now, as far as I know, everything that is on here. I mean, the pads, as you just said, the pads for the AC units are part of this and so on, but they're also they're already listed on here. So the big issue is the U-shape being gone and reducing that to a wide walkway, a 6 foot to match the 6 foot door, which is still less than half of what a driveway would be in width.
Well, let
So
me,
you'd actually be saving 75% because you're now switching paved asphalt, cutting it in half, and then cutting that in half with pavers.
so let me jump ahead without wanting to prejudice exactly what we're saying, but wherever we think we end up, what would be appropriate is for you to take that back and come back with a revised drawing, with a revised calculation, so that the way the board works, we do come generally to what I'll call an informal verbal agreement.
Mhm.
But then that gets documented by our lawyer in a resolution.
Right.
And we want to make sure that there is a revised drawing, which can be attached to the resolution, which shows the modified calculation and says, the real number is 14.9, or whatever it is.
Right.
And that would then be in the record going forward.
Now, just out of curiosity, because you just said that, what if that revised number is 15.17?
I think,
I'm not a fan of making them come back. I think we can do it now. And
well, it's the end, what happens is the engineer and the professionals review it.
Okay.
It comes back to them, and then they say to Marty, yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, but we
As
have
he
to,
puts the,
So we can, if you,
we have to agree on a number, though. We can't just leave it open.
can I jump in for a second if you want?
Sure.
So
Go
what
ahead.
we've done in the past, and two we're gonna do tonight, is we have approved applicants' applications subject to certain things being resubmitted prior to the resolution adoption, assuming our professionals sign off on it, then it goes in. So we've actually changed a coverage number for one of the resolutions tonight based on the revised calculations, and that number is in the resolution. So it was approved to give them essentially what we just talked about, no circular in this application, no back driveway, whatever that ends up being, whether it's 15.1 or 14.9, and then we'll get the exact number prior to the hearing.
I would say, just to go on, as offhand, I think it will be tough to get this down under 15. I think they can get it close to 15, but based on just the numbers we've heard tonight, so the board, if the board would be comfortable with that, that's something the board would consider. You may want to consider granting within the realm.
Not to exceed or-
Yes,
Yeah,
of
not-
what the,
not to
yes,
exceed
of what the
number.
applicant and
Yeah.
the professional has testified to tonight, which is somewhere probably in the realm of 17 or 17 and a half maximum. And then we would take, then they would resubmit the plans, we would look at the final number, and that's what would go in the resolution, provided it's less than that. I believe that's what you're doing with some of the other.
Wait a minute, you calculated before without doing the rear driveway, 17, I heard you say something, Lonnie. What was the number?
It was like 17.2.
Okay, so if we're cutting that other driveway in half and then an extra half because it's pavers, it's got to bring it down at least to 16.
Right, yes.
Seven-
I don't know.
You might-
17
you might
sounds
you
too
might
high to
wanna-
me.
Yeah, you might want to just say not to exceed 17, and then they'll
Not to
have
exceed
to.
16 would be more like it.
Well, if we give an idea of what we're approving in terms of the measurements, I think that, then the lot coverage will fit into that, so, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure what the distance is between the back portion of that.
May I
Nobody
ask
has
this?
anything to scale
I
it.
would agree to take out the circular driveway, which seems to be a substantial part, right? Keep in mind, I'm an R40B, which is typically a 2.5 acre, right? 15%
That's one of the
that-
reasons for the weirdness.
But 15% of that is substantially more than 15% of my 1.1, right? So
Well-
trying to keep me to 16, I
Well-
would even say that limits any, what if I, you know,
As long as, let me just pause you a second. We're not clear on what, in fact, the size of the lot is. How,
The survey-
and that's a key part of the calculation. Is
50,000.
it .9, is it 1.1?
1.1.
You think, you believe it's 1.1?
Yeah, that includes the dedication of the land from Apple Grove Drive.
Okay, so the,
Our tax records are incorrect then, so Eric is going to have to go out and recalculate the lot with that 6,500 square foot in it from the 90s that was not
so you
done.
both
Well, the
believe
survey
that the
says
number
that-
is 1.1?
After seeing the survey and looking at the tax map, I'm inclined to say that the tax map includes that 6,500, and so did his survey, but for some reason, our tax assessor did not.
Okay, so you believe the correct number is the 1.19?
1.16.
1.1,
What's on the survey?
1.9, yeah.
1.16.
1.9, yes.
Plus or minus.
No,
okay.
plus or minus.
Okay, you're saying that the 1.19, because this is on 1.16.
I know, yes. I would go, the numbers that we've been dealing with all night are based off of the 1.16 or the 50,000.
242.
50,242 as the overall property size. So that's what all of the calculations tonight have been based
Okay.
on. Which
By
we,
the way, the survey is going to be correct over anything else, because those are actual calculations.
yes,
The survey
yes.
says it's 1.16, that's the number.
Yeah, but on the tax map, it has 1.19, and then there's
She
another
says
number.
there's another one, it's
The tax
0.9.
map is frequently an approximate.
So we have three different numbers.
Yeah.
Well, but the survey is
Survey.
actually, what I would be banking on is what's correct.
Here's the
and we did
survey.
that 1.16, just so we're all.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Eric will be happy.
Okay, let me back off a second. Let's understand where we're at. With regard to coverage, the applicant is withdrawing the request for the circular driveway. He's modifying the request for how much gets paved by saying that the extension to the barn garage would be a walkway, pavers, doesn't need to be asphalt.
Now, I can appreciate what you said, that your job is only to say yes or no. Is that really a determining factor of this, the pavers? Because what I was trying to imply before is, this pool is not in, nothing is in yet. I have not decided, do I want pavers and pick weeds for the next couple of years, or do I want to put concrete, or I have not picked the type of coverage, and that will change, right? So I thought removing that circular driveway, which is a substantial part, is, like I said, don't want to do it, but I completely get that. But promising that this slight part over here will be pavers, I don't want to commit to that. Because then I have to say definitely pavers and not, a concrete walkway there, or not.
I'm going to, informal poll, who would be inclined to vote in favor of this application with the driveway as proposed by the applicant? So all the way, so the pavement, the blacktop will go all the way to the back.
With or without the circular?
Well, I think he's already acknowledged that he's not getting a circular driveway out of us. I think he
No,
recognizes
he's
that.
proposing amending that.
Yeah.
We're not getting it out
Well,
of
I
us.
think he's already acknowledged.
Use the right
that
terminology.
he will amend his application to remove the circular driveway, because I think he's gotten the pulse of the board, that's gonna be a hard no. So he doesn't wanna take out his blacktop to the back, to
But-
the ancillary.
But make it smaller.
No, he's asking him.
Now he's taking it back.
I don't even,
Will you reduce the width of that to a pathway, even if it's concrete?
Of course, but if it was concrete, which is full coverage, not, I guess the part that was concerning is hearing the word pavers. Knowing that pavers are only half coverage, yes, I only want a walkway there. I don't.
Okay, a 5-foot walkway or something.
But of concrete, possibly.
Okay,
Maybe.
that's what we're talking about.
All right, well, I'm trying to help him out to get the pulse of the board as to what way he needs to go with his request. So I'm asking if, as the applicant proposes, which is the circular driveway is done, the blacktop will stop at,
Where you pull to the garage. big
yeah,
mansion house.
we can sort of show it on the survey for Marty where it would be, and then it will be a 5-foot wide.
Walkway.
The doorway's 6 feet. That doorway is 6 feet.
Yeah, that makes
You do
sense.
6,
6-foot wide, let's just call it impervious for
Right.
purposes
Or-
of this.
or-
Right.
Impervious, concrete, whatever he wants to put, so let's assume worst case, impervious, substance from the blacktop back to the ancillary structure. Is this more than people inclined to go in favor
Well,
of that?
the difficulty for me is that a big part of the final calculation is the pool and pool patio.
Yeah,
We have no numbers for that.
well, he's telling us they follow the.
We do?
Yes, we do.
Yes, those are, the pool patio is part of these overall calculations, where they've stated.
They're on there, in the bottom.
1,500.
The pool patio is impervious.
Yes, the pool
Yeah.
patio is impervious. The pool is not considered as such, but the patio is. And so the calculations that are at the bottom of the colored survey slips.
Okay, so that,
Yeah, that is there, and all of the utility pads, et cetera, are included there too.
okay, so
If
that,
they're under 18,
so that the patio, is this saying patio's 1,500, although it hasn't been built or designed yet? So the shape may change or whatever, but you want to keep those numbers, keep whatever you end up doing less than these
Work
numbers.
backwards, right,
I
exactly.
understand that.
May I ask a question? This 1,500 square feet of the patio, is that based on pavers, or is that going to be based on concrete? Because pavers are half, so that means if they calculated that 1,500, that patio is 3,000 square feet. If he puts a concrete patio in,
Then
that's
he's
a
over.
100% 3,000 square foot patio.
That's based on concrete. That,
18% coverage number?
Is the 1,500?
that's,
Well, the 1,500, but I don't know whether that 1,500 is based on paver patios at 50% coverage?
no, Lonnie, it's based on concrete.
Okay.
It would be 750 if it was pavers.
Okay.
So there's 1,500 as a max.
Okay. Because they look like pavers to me in
Well,
little
even
drawing.
if it's pavers, you'd want concrete under the pavers so they don't sink.
No, doesn't have to be done that way.
So it absolutely should be done that way.
Okay, Valerie.
And that could be tweaked down too, you know, so whatever.
Debated.
We could use the 1,500 as a cap.
But I have not thought that through yet, right? I'm not at the backyard, and I just did not want to pigeonhole myself into saying, hey, this little piece over here, I'm gonna do pavers, yes. So I was hoping
Yeah.
that what you see, minus the circular driveway, me and my family would be happy.
Just when you resubmit, you know, whenever the board decides to go this route and resubmit, just make sure that everything's clear what the surface material that's being calculated for is. And if that's all concrete, then, you know, then just so it's for the record for when things are constructed.
So,
Does he still have to go to the township for the regular driveway, because that's going to cross the easement?
So that was going to be one of my other comments for the applicant's consideration with amending their application, is that, you know, based on how our easement ordinance is written, I think that this is already the driveway area that's there is already considered a structure. And we think it may predate the easement, so I don't believe so, that they would have to get township approval for that. But again, you know, even, and by township approval, I mean township committee. But in any case, any structure that's there is at the behest of the easement holder in the future. So.
Right, so they could come and say, hey, we need to get to this pipe and rip up that driveway, whatever it's made out of, to
Yes.
get to it.
So can we go back to my informal poll question so we can get an idea of where we're headed? So the issue is would you be inclined to vote in favor of allowing the applicant? I'm going to assume that everyone's somewhat in favor of what he's asking for.
What, the 18-foot high?
Well, that, we
I'm
haven't,
leaving that to the side for now.
Oh, okay.
I'm
Pervious,
figuring-
pervious or impervious walkway to
Right.
the structure?
I'm figuring that we're removing the circular driveway, we're allowing the 18-foot roof, you may not be agreeing, but I'm assuming that for this question. What I'm talking about is what we're considering allowing with respect to from the blacktop back to the secondary structure in the back. So whether the board would want to see that be some kind of pervious coverage, or whether it would be willing to allow impervious coverage, which is what the applicant said. So Francine, what's your
View here is the coverage percentage. How he does that, if it means he's got to make a smaller walkway and make it impervious, or he's got to put pavers around the pool, my concern is to keep within a reasonable coverage, which I think we were discussing around 17%. I know there's a lot of unknowns here, as the picture shows it's pavers or concrete. I'm willing to...
Actually, I worked up the engineer's calculations, and I added, he has a walkway of 143, I made that 286, I added 1,500 cap for patio, comes to 16.9% coverage. With the driveway going to the back, 16.9, so if you streamline that a little, that'll drop that a little below 16.9.
Right, in other words, stay within that. I would hate to see that you go do something, then you go to put in your pool and you're coming before us again and asking for another variance, because I think this board won't be as favorable about granting you that variance if you need it again. So better that we approve something that we feel comfortable with.
Right, because
And
you'll come back when it's all done with an as-built, and if your coverage is over what we gave, then you might have a big raise.
We rip it
That's-
and pavers.
Yeah. I don't think we should tell you what to do as far as whether you're going to do pavers or not. I think you figure out what you can do, staying within the allowances of the ordinance that we approve the variance.
The only open-ended issue is the pavers on the patio. Everything else, the coverage is legit. Because even if you did pavers in a driveway, they're 100% coverage. So you're only open, your flexible areas are going to be here and that walkway. And if we stay under 16.9, you're good. That covers you for the pad, that covers you for everything.
And sand. So what is needed from me at this point tonight?
well, Valerie's trying to get a sense, and so hang on a moment.
Okay, forgive me.
Verify?
Yeah, I think I more or less agree with what Francine said. Keep your designs under 17% and do whatever changes needed. I think we're good to go with under 17% limit.
And under 17.
Well,
give
there,
me-
there are some issues we have. We still have the 18-foot and a couple of other
Right.
things to address, and we'll deal with that separately. I mean, as someone who's been on the Environmental Commission and been to too many meetings concerned about stormwater, I understand Mr. Tetra was at last night's TC meeting again, concerned about the flooding. He's one that's in the Mahoris Wake Cake, and when it goes over, his house is an island, literally. So it is an item of concern. I certainly want to give you folks credit for listening to what the board's been concerned about. The numbers in the ordinances they're fixed numbers, but they don't necessarily always take into account the real world. Here we're finding that the numbers from an R40B are being applied to a pre-existing non-conforming undersized lot. So whether it's literally just 15% or it goes to 17 is not the end of the world, but you need to. The other thing, and it was in the Environmental Commission letter, and I'll just briefly comment on it, and that one other way to ameliorate coverage is what's referred to as green BMPs. That is, BMP meaning best management practices. The state last year and the township adopted new stormwater regs, which apply to larger developments and not to this property. but the state, in its greater wisdom, says for any larger development, you must address stormwater, you must reduce the flow off of your property so it's less than before, and the way you have to do it is with what's called green BMPs. Not just something mechanical, but things like rain gardens, and things that will help increase the infiltration into the
Absorption.
ground so it doesn't flow off the property. If you're within 1 or 2% of the number, to me, and there was an existing house with about the same size, if you're maintaining about the same size driveway, the biggest addition here is the pool, but to the extent that you can, as you do things, try to do it better and, and minimize the impact on the neighborhood and the downstream flooding. So I can go along with that. We still have other issues to address.
That water runoff, I'm assuming you're talking about into the street, things like that, the open areas, the public areas?
Or the brook.
Well, in the case of the survey here, it's going back into the brook in the
No
back,
matter what, yeah.
no matter what.
It naturally went into the brook.
Correct. So if this were a 5-acre lot that you were completely developing, and that's not the case, but this new state regs would say you must decrease the runoff from that lot.
Mhm.
And you'll have to do it with rain gardens, infiltration basins with sand, so that water goes down and not into
Over
the
land.
stream,
Right.
not over the land.
Might have
Ending up-
25% to use to do that
Yes, correct, yeah, and,
in the same zone.
Not if it was a 5-acre lot.
yeah, I mean, and it gets complicated in the case of the Mahoris Way cake. The modeling is indicated like there's been it goes under a bridge at Middle Road, not far from Laurel. And the bridge has totally been underwater at times. It turns out the height of the bridge, the top of the bridge, is 10 feet above sea level. So it's not just water going downstream, which water tends to do, but also the fact that tidal surge causes it to back up. So it gets complicated.
Mhm.
And the more development there is, the more coverage there is, the worse it gets.
Right,
I can understand that.
okay.
Okay. I can go along with something reasonable.
So, you kind of already have an idea of my feelings, without getting into a big discussion. We're on this board to allow variance to people that have a hardship on their property and they want to do something. So it's one thing if you have a hardship that has occurred on your property. It's another thing if you just want to do it because you want it. Okay, so a lot of us here will grant variances for very different reasons. I'm probably the hardest nose of everybody here, and I try to say to myself, what's the detriment to the neighbors, to the town, for granting this building that's going to be 18 feet high or impervious coverage of 23 feet? I don't see any hardship for you that requires us to grant a variance like that. So with that being said, and we'll treat the other issues that Ralph said separately, and to answer Valerie's question, if you got it down to 16 and a half, I would be okay with that.
The coverage.
Yep. And when I would stipulate, and Marty would stipulate a number, whatever it is, 16 and a half or 17 even, if that's what everybody else wants. And that's it. And it's your builder's responsibility to figure out how to meet that number, not come back here in 2 months and say, hey, well, we couldn't do it, now we're at 20. Because I can tell you one thing, if I'm still on this board, I'm going to vote no.
Gene?
Yeah, I guess I'd be in agreement with the other people on the board, which would say that if it's below like 17%, I'd be okay with that.
Okay. Jason?
I'm leaning towards allowing the height variance based on hearing any comments from the public. I'd like to hear what the public needs to say or any neighbors. As far as the coverage ratio being, I think we said 16 and a half, I think it makes more sense from where the black top pavement will end, going with pervious pavers to that secondary structure makes more sense. I think the applicant had said doing weeding around your pool area with pavers, it makes more sense to do a little bit of weeding on that walkway to the secondary structure than doing weeding around the pool area. So I think you'll get the coverage ratio to about 16.5% by doing the impervious walkway, something like pavers that way. But again, I want to hold my final decision to hearing what the public says about the height of the secondary structure.
Okay. Jill?
I mean, I'm in agreement. I think that you really need to be mindful.
She's going to need a mic.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
I think keeping it to under 17% is necessary, so I'm inclined to agree with the board.
Okay. Let's see, Gaurav isn't here. Let's move, all right, let's set that issue aside from the moment, and let's address the other things that are still sitting here. One is the location and the side setback variances that are needed. I think that in terms of the 1.5 to 2.5 feet from the site line, that's a pre-existing condition that we should simply grant that, but the height is a different issue. Who would like to comment at this point about or unless you have something further to say about the height? If you hadn't built it yet, we'd say stay under 15.
Mm-hmm.
But since it's there,
I mean, listen, none of us are happy about it, obviously, but our remedy is to force somebody to rip off a roof, and I personally will not vote to make somebody rip off a roof.
Somebody that didn't get a permit.
I don't care. I mean, Dimitri, it's done now, and there's plenty of people who do things without permits, and I'm not condoning it, but the reality is it happens all the time. And so it's done now. So the options are leave it alone.
let me ask Lonnie a question related to this. There's some people, and I don't disagree, feel, hey, you shouldn't be able to get away with that. There should be some penalties. I believe the stop work got put on it or something.
It was pretty much already finished. Had Steve Winters, the construction official, wrote a violation, it would be $2,000 a day.
So did he write such a violation?
No, he did not.
Okay, so there is no violation?
I wrote a violation, but my remedy was to get them to come to you.
Okay, so
Rather
there's been no
rather than
fining
going
or
to
No
municipal
financial.
court. No, there's no financial, where there could have been a large financial penalty. I chose to have them take it to the board rather than to go to municipal court, which is my vehicle for fines.
Steve did tell me to make sure to get the package into him, and as I said, when we did that, new construction, which is bonded and licensed and insured, wasn't applicable, and they wanted the HIC license. But I did get the package.
The variance, Steve could now write up a violation.
Correct.
And there could be a fine of $2,000 a day. Because I guess, Ralph, you're getting at some sort of financial.
I just want to make sure we have a full picture of what's it. Have they already been punished or not? It was, and so far, and the way Lonnie chose to, and that's Lonnie being generous, as she always is, saying, let's see if we can't resolve this without swinging 2x4s at each other.
And I would assume that there has been no violations of no permit for the construction person or yourself before this time.
Told me to put the package together. I put it together immediately and submitted it.
So Lonnie hasn't seen it, but it may be upstairs.
Yeah, it's definitely upstairs. It's there.
Are we going to hear from the public?
We definitely will. Okay, so perhaps at this point, are there other issues that people want to have discussed yet, or should?
Well, I guess maybe right, let's keep members of the public speak.
Okay.
Valerie, you got to put that in my head.
We'd like to hear the two members of the public speak.
Yes, whether it's your, we're going to open the floor for comments, questions from members of the public on this application? If you're interested in commenting, please come up to the mic, identify yourself. You don't have to live next door, but if you have something you'd like to say about this, please come on up.
Hi, Russell Bay. I just,
Use the mic.
Russell Bay, Bay, B-A-Y.
And what's your address?
R-U-S-S. Yeah, I just want to say.
Address.
What's your address?
6 Red Oak Run in Holmdel. So it's on the back street. It's like,
6 Red Oak?
yeah.
Okay.
So it's on the other side of the street.
Oh, it's the other side.
We got
so-
it, yeah, we got like a little water stream right there, and I would like to say about the storm water, like,
We just need to swear you in. You gotta make a comment?
yeah,
I'm gonna just swear you in so it's part of the record.
yeah.
Just swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
So all the storm,
Yeah,
okay.
just repeat after me. Do you
Okay.
swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yeah, okay,
Yes, thank you.
yeah, okay. That's it?
That's it.
Okay.
Wait, before he
So-
says, let's try to figure out which lot is this. Do you know if your lot is 5511?
Yeah, I don't know.
Is
There's
it right,
55,
is this property right behind yours?
no, my property's on the back street, see.
Your
So on,
6 Red Oak
yes, so it's on the other side.
6
So it's
Red
on the
Oak?
other side of his house.
Share of the water.
Probably, yes.
It's
I
not
just-
directly adjacent to, he's at the end of the Red Oak.
5512?
Yeah.
I don't have the lot in front of me.
It's at the cul-de-sac where the little goes out and then it gets wider, your property?
No, it's the one south of that.
Closer to something,
It backs up to Laurel.
oh, okay, that's on this
Yeah,
side.
that cul-de-sac backs up to Laurel.
Yeah,
Right.
so,
So he's reverse frontage lot on.
so, I just would like to say about the stormwater, I got a video, can I show a video to you, or? Sure. Like, I don't know.
I don't know how
Should
we
I
can
show
see
it to
that.
you? That's what you were saying, this is the stormwater, it goes from.
This is the stream at the back of your
Yeah,
property.
at the back of my property. You see all this flood zone, that's the house next to it, that's the house next to his house. I'm gonna show you his garage. His garage right here, and it's all flat, that's his garage.
Is that water?
That's the,
Yeah.
yeah, that's the water, that's house next to his house.
When was that taken?
Last year, October 26th.
Can you share with us over here?
So the
And
lot
and
is.
it's not long time, like, it happens like every, like.
Did you take that video?
Yeah,
Okay.
last year. That's,
Last year before they did any of the construction.
yeah, yeah.
But when you
So
say the
that's
house next
next
to
house.
his house, are you referring to lot 59? The one that it's
Yeah,
frontage
the
on
next
Laurel?
house, they just
Okay.
bought a house like a couple years ago, and they built everything nice, and I was telling them, there's water gonna
Okay,
go there.
that would be
because-
lot 59
Yeah.
next.
Yeah, which is Gary, what was Gary's lot?
Gary Ormiller?
Frank Lanudo was
So
down
this
there.
goes back to the environmental commission with the
You
coverage.
see all these?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's all my side. Like, if you look on the other side, it's all flat. So if they're gonna add more water, I'm not sure where they're gonna put a pool. You said they're gonna put a pool, but if they're gonna put a pool, it's gonna add more water, and the water gonna go.
Well, the pool is
Wanna
in the
show them?
calculation. Show them.
Well, we didn't even talk about where the pool water would go and backwash and all that.
That's next house.
I know, Valerie.
It's the coverage. Coverage.
And so,
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, do you put like a dry well or something?
so,
The thing is, it's-
Yeah, I mean, that's, gets at what, there's a myriad of DMPs.
so that's before they build the house.
Yes, yeah.
Just, JD, stop a second. Can you show that to the applicant and his counsel if they want to see what you're doing?
So,
Yeah, I do
Yes,
wanna
it was a
see
year
that.
ago,
he's gonna get
last year.
Because they're piling me.
this garage door was named
Right across my
They
whole
bought a house like a couple years ago.
Up to my house, water. My wife went crazy screaming. That's why. I
So,
was
and
against
it
this.
happens
It's not
like
the
a
first
few
time
times a
I've
year.
been involved.
So for last year, like, I bought a house like a couple years ago. And then,
See it too?
Coverage ratio.
Well,
That's why.
I understand.
Guys, 1 second.
Wait here.
And then there's
you see this working?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we just gotta figure out where the water's gonna go.
yeah, I mean, it's,
That's what happened with that.
Is this pointing out the existing hazard based on water?
yeah, I mean, water follows gravity. It always goes downhill. And
So, yeah.
it's, I mean, and that's where the concern was. There are places in that watershed where it's worse. Now, to ask you, there's clearly when there are bad rainstorms, and there've been more of them recently, someone has said that we get a 100-year storm every 5 years now, but that in this case, has there been any damage or danger that you've observed?
Like a danger for what? Like,
no, in terms of house becoming underwater.
The house gonna get underwater? I don't think so. Like,
It's
like,
so it's been wet, but not dangerous.
yeah, but let's say his neighbor, like a next house after his house, all his backyard was destroyed. That's all. So the water gets so close to the house, but it didn't go to the house. But it get close to the house, it may go to the basement. I don't know. You have to speak to the next house.
It's just reiterating. It's an area of concern in this watershed.
It just bothers me a little. That's why I made the video, like for the future. Like, I don't know, to show one day. I don't know. So like I said, I'm just got scared. My kids got scared because he getting close to my house, and they can see all the water coming on the on the little steam. It basically just
His house was built in 1800, right?
Yeah.
Your house is a newcomer.
Yeah, like 2000 something.
You have a pool on your property?
Yeah.
You get to do everything you want to do. But I'm just speaking from.
Yeah, but it's 2.5 acres.
It's not fair to tell another homeowner whose property predated your whole subdivision that he can't do what he wants to do.
No, I'm not saying he can't do. I'm just saying it's all flood zone. So I got 2.5. I got 2.5 acres from 2.5 acres. I got one and something acres flood zone. So I can't build anything there. And my flood zone is higher than his house.
You have wetlands.
So yeah, like a wetland flood. I don't know, flood zone.
You have wetlands.
There's a conservation and open space.
So I
easement.
can't do anything there. So I can't put it.
It's a consideration that we didn't think about with the impervious versus impervious.
It's-
Pool area, we have to consider that.
Well, I guess one thing in terms of the pool, saying the applicant that we didn't talk about is backwashing and things like that.
Yeah, so
It turns out most pools find it necessary to backwash their filter system and the like,
Or drain some
or drain some of the water. And when that happens, where does that water go? We haven't talked about that yet. But there are better and worse ways of addressing that. And some of these BMPs might be the way to do it. Some people just dump it in the street, but that's the opposite direction. Here, you're more likely to have it go to the back of the property, downstream. What might you think about it?
Are you done, sir? Sorry.
Are you finished?
You're done.
That's the only one that I would like to say.
Okay.
Okay, what
Good.
about
Thank
the
you.
other
By
gentleman?
mail,
Do you have any comment about the height of the garage, the barn?
I don't even like see the house.
Okay.
That was not like in front.
Do you have any comment, sir? No. Okay.
So, I can only speak for this end of the dais over here. There's still some concern over, especially in light of the gentleman's comment about trying to bring the impervious coverage down a little bit more. So, are you committing to pavers for the patio?
The property here, by the way, just looking at this grade, the natural grade of the property right now, at that location, is 12 feet above the creek. On the
Yep.
other side of the creek, the property also climbs.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how you're gonna fill 3.5 acres of land with water. If it goes up 12 feet, we're all gonna be in deep trouble. It's impossible. I don't know his lot in particular, but I do know when you look out, this property slopes down to the creek, and the property on the sides slopes up. So there's no way that this water is gonna run down 12 feet into the creek, and then jump out of the creek and go up to get to his
The
property.
concern is further downstream.
All right,
You're adding
that I
value.
understand, but as I said, we can, this lot has been in existence, actually, somebody said 120 years. I think it's, the Petoskey family has been there for 3 or 4 generations before Mr. Fanny bought the property. And there hasn't been any flooding on either lot, because I got to know the gentleman next door on both sides. So again, as you just said, somebody just commented, gravity, water runs downhill. I understand that. I don't know how it's going to run back uphill for 200 feet to cause any damage. But whatever you see fit, you're saying backwash the pool. I'm not a pool contractor. I don't know how often they backwash the pool. I would imagine if you keep the water filtered, it's down to a minimum, maybe once or twice a year. When you do it at the end of the year and the beginning of the year, you shock it in the beginning of the year, and you do it at the end of the year. I
But
don't.
you do have to drain excess water out of your pool extremely frequently. Every time you get a heavy rain, you probably have to dump water. So where's that going?
So we're just looking for some place for that water to stay on your property
All right.
and not hit the stream.
How much water are we
Basically,
pumping
that's
out?
the easiest way to
I
explain
understand,
it.
but if you're having a pool and a pool has roughly 20,000 gallons of water, you're not pumping out the 20,000 gallons of water every time, otherwise the walls would collapse. So you're talking about topping off a pool. How much water are you generating? We'd have to put a number on that.
I know, but you're looking at it too detailed. All we're saying is, as long as whatever you drain or don't drain, or how much
Well,
gallons it is,
let's-
doesn't go off your
Okay,
property, you're okay.
Let's try
That's
to
it.
move along a little bit here.
We are
This
moving
storm
along.
was like 5 o'clock in the morning, so I'm not,
Yeah, It's,
nobody expect they're gonna be.
have we addressed, what's open yet? The height issue,
Well, I
what,
think the height issue, we were probably, I think
I
we're
don't
all
think
fairly,
we're-
I think everyone's pretty good height issue. I feel that we're all going.
Marty?
I just want to, did we officially close the public? I want to make sure that's.
Yeah.
okay, we close the public. If there's any new testimony, we'll open it again.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Go
So
ahead.
I
Discussion
think
on
the
it.
height issue is resolved. Unless anyone on this board wants to raise their hand and tell us they're not all right with it, we are all gonna grant the variance.
Are you okay with it?
I'm not all right with it, but I didn't say I'm not
Well, I
gonna
said
grant the
you're all right
variance.
with it. I decided for you to be choice.
So it's the coverage ratio, right? And the public has said 16.5 might not be sufficient. So the BMPs that Ralph has brought up, is that something that we consider adding to the requirement?
We certainly have, we can.
But we would like him to suggest that he's gonna do it, not us telling him.
Yeah, I mean, the way we've done it in the
No, but I would
past.
say, there was no penalties imposed, so whatever the additional costs as BMPs are, you could look at it as an offset to any potential penalty fines that would have incurred. So that's not happening, right? They were very good over here about that. So the BMP cost is gonna help us get excess coverage and a gravity going downhill flooding issues that may or may not be his problem, but someone else's problem. The Environmental Commission wrote a letter to the board asking us to, not approve this. So how do we reconcile this?
You want to read that?
Basically, what we're saying here, though, on a 50,242 square foot lot, 1,000 square feet represents 2%. So if he was at 15% as opposed to 17%, this discussion about water runoff and everything else wouldn't be an issue, because then the lot could handle
We
it.
would still talk about water runoff from the pool.
Well, no, we wouldn't need.
Why would we talk about it if we're-
You know,
If it's not a coverage issue, then why we?
Oh, yeah, we wouldn't be here.
You have the letter there from the Environmental?
Yeah.
Why don't you read that?
Okay. It's, and they've been modifying their language.
They have it.
They have the letter. Well, you just read for the
Read
record.
the
no
last
comment.
sentence, the last paragraph.
Should the zoning board grant the variance, HEC recommends green BMPs along with the maintenance plan and deed notice to protect adjacent and downstream landowners be submitted to the board engineer for condition and compliance of the resolution.
Well, with regard to the suggested BMP.
Well,
Okay, so I mean, with regard to, for the applicant's contractor, when you request a variance from the zoning board of adjustment, the board has the authority to grant reasonable conditions. And that's exactly, what this is what we're talking about here. And BMP is a, pretty technical term that any civil engineer will be very familiar with in the
Right.
state. At least becoming more and more familiar with. And these are really the equivalent of they can be non-mechanical interventions.
Right.
That really help.
Dry wells, so on and so forth.
Dry wells, rain gardens,
Right.
certain types of swales within your property. Not every BMP is appropriate for every situation, but the idea is that these are things that are unintrusive, they're green, which, hence why they're called green BMPs, and they can actually, not just help with the drainage, but they can really beautify your property. It's not like installing some sort of, thing that requires a lot of maintenance. It's something like, you plant a rain garden and use it to keep up on the plantings like you would a normal bed. So that's what I think the board is looking at, and this is the type of thing where this isn't going to be a calculation. It's not like you have to drain, like this, if it was a larger project and the state were involved, they would say you have to have enough BMPs, you have to remedy X amount of flow per day or whatever. That's not what this board is looking for. This board is just looking for a good faith effort to manage the stormwater on your property that may result from impervious coverage that's over the limit that's set for this zone.
Yeah, and let me expand on the latter part of that sentence as well, because that's a new that the Environmental Commission just added. Aside from just doing it now, as Kate mentioned, some of these things require maintenance. That you don't want the drain to get clogged wherever it is. You may periodically need to clean it out a little bit. Or in the case of plantings, to make sure that they're still alive, replace things that die. And that's covered by a maintenance plan, typically. For bigger projects, it can be voluminous. For something like this, it doesn't need to be. And the last one that's on here is a deed notice. That is, they're suggesting, and this is something, this is the first letter they put it in, but it just came up last week, that a notice to the effect that there is a green BMP on the property, that there is a maintenance plan for it, should be included with the deed. So it becomes a formal matter of record that if and when the property is sold, there's a way of that information gets to the new property owner. It doesn't just get disappeared. I know I have an easement on our property. It's not recorded anywhere. Nobody knows about it. It's a squiggly line on one map because that's the way you did things 50 years ago. But more and more people are finding, hey, it's a good idea to record things a little bit. So here, for example, since the state rules do not apply, but the concept of trying to ameliorate flooding, to limit off-site, still exists as a principle. So what one might suggest here is, okay, the board has said we'll allow up to, say, I'll pick a number, 16.5%, but the applicant agrees to have an engineer submit some potential green BMPs which ameliorate it so that it would act as if it's only 15% to absorb that. And that could be done with a swale or a couple of things just behind the pool on the downhill way where the water would flow anyway. You could use it to catch the backflow or whatever is needed.
Slow it down.
To slow it down. And that would address the gentleman's concerns about saying, we're definitely not going to make it worse.
Forgive me, two questions. While I respect his concerns, one cannot say that's from my property, right? Because the gentleman on the left, that is significant. So his garage that was in the picture, and I'm not even certain that that's his garage, but let's say it is on the other side of the creek and house, end of their house. So nowhere even near me. In theory, that's a part of the Laurel address that house, once had. In addition to that, they're suggesting these BMPs, if you grant the variance. So are you saying I talk with an engineer, I agree to some of these BMPs, and I get the 22.6 that this was presented?
No, I don't think the board would agree to that. The board.
But that's what the.
Well, they didn't specifically say.
The Environmental Commission can only review what's in front of them, and so they only have the 22.6 in front of them. But the idea behind BMPs and any type of stormwater management is that it's commensurate with the coverage on the property. So, for example, like we said, like 22% or 22.2% would there could be more interventions that the board could be looking, or also our engineers who are not here tonight, but we do have board engineers who will review this and are happy to, you know, they review these things all the time. So that's really, it's really commensurate with what's being proposed. The other thing that I just want to mention quickly for the applicant's sake, and the board is familiar with this, is that this is becoming a standard request for applicants throughout the township. You know, when people come in here for pool variances, the board is always asking them, where's the backwash going to go? How is this going to drain? Where will this go? And when people do come in for impervious coverage variances, you know, this is a township-wide. You know, this is something that the board does prioritize. So it's, you know, it's not, you know, it seems like it's a small difference because you have an undersized lot, but this is something that is frequently, you know, because it's a cumulative effect, like what it does say in this letter. So that's where the board.
And the Environmental Commission, in fact, has suggested to the township, it didn't get adopted, that it become a mandatory.
Did I ask you?
No. Okay. There's a lot of piece parts flying around here. I think we've focused on a bunch of them. We've led to some progress on reaching an agreement on some of them. We haven't dotted all the i's and crossed all the t's. That sometimes the board, what has done is made what I'll call a conditional resolution. We agree to the following, with the following conditions, and then leave it all to the engineer and the lawyer to work it out. Although our lawyer just whispered in my ear and suggested maybe just adjourn this for right now, give you folks a chance to address all the issues that have been discussed, and come back with an alternative proposal addressing everything that's been discussed over the last, good grief, almost 2 hours now, which has just surprised me. It surprised everybody here. It's a complex situation with a bunch of existing conditions which really create the hardship, is the word that Dimitri used, which is what gives the board the authority to create variances and permissions, because it's recognized that it's not possible to write the perfect ordinance that addresses every conceivable thing that can happen.
Like having somebody at a 1.16 acre have an R40B zone.
You name it. Yeah.
Ralph, I'd like to make a comment, and I'm sure Valerie will agree with me on this one, since she made me agree to hers. I would like the applicant or applicant's attorney to sum up what they want to modify on their application and see if this board would vote on there and not incur another hardship of having that applicant come back another night and go through this again. So Marty, I'm sure, can word it the right way. We've done it before. But I would like the applicant, attorney, and the applicant to think about all these things we said and tell us what they want now that we need to vote on.
Can we have a few minutes?
Yep.
Yes.
She didn't say nothing when I said that.
We're going to take a brief pause to give them a chance to confer. You mean we're going to
Intermission?
And I'm going to take a brief break here.
Valerie, why are you wearing a mask? So you don't know if you have it or not?
17.38%. And I would like to address, my engineer to briefly address with you that 3/8, that extra 0.38%. And we would move to remove the circular driveway.
Okay. So that you still, the other things that were, you still need the height variance for the
We
barn?
would ask that you accept the barn as it is, and grant that portion of my client's.
And
Variance
also for the pre-existing situation of the undersized lot and the setback of the barn from the property line, were there any other pre-existing?
No, those were the two.
Those were the two. And with regard.
Undersized lot, the undersized lot.
Undersized, yeah. And with regard to going over 15, would you consider doing some green BMPs to ameliorate that?
Yes. There's already, we already have a proposal on
I
that.
thought of something which, if you look at the picture, you see there's an existing pond on the property.
Right.
And what I was possibly thinking of doing, if it's acceptable, is literally what we talked about, whether it's a dry well or almost creating your own mini detention basin, by excavating that, putting additional stone at the bottom so it doesn't become any more of a safety hazard than what it is.
And some sand for infill.
Sand, whatever, and then this will actually take the overflow water, slow it down considerably, because now it'll dissipate. It'll work as a detention basin, exactly, but on his own property, so it's gonna handle his water. And you can see the location, it's got plenty of pitch to it, and all I have to do is massage that property to make the grade towards the.
And what we would ask is you do something about putting that proposal in writing so it can be reviewed by our engineer who isn't here tonight. And who is much more familiar than any of us with the details of those structures. But yes.
The dry wells are only 500 gallons, it's minimal, but this would be significant because it would take the water on, dissipate it.
And, I guess your neighbor, but that's the kind of thing I think that helps everybody make things better for the whole neighborhood and for the town.
And then and I didn't come up with that 17.389 by just guesstimating. I literally took the engineer's numbers, calculated everything, took away the U-shape, still shrunk down that little section of driveway, and then what I'll do is work whatever remaining space, whatever that patio has to be, shrink it down to whatever it has to be around the pool.
Okay. So that's what you're modifying the application as you just described?
Can I just
Go ahead.
clarify so that the last thing you said, which was the last condition this board had talked about, was you're going to reduce that back, I'm going to call it that back driveway piece to half the width?
What we're trying to do is, because it's very difficult to plan exactly what's happening, that's why we calculated out to exactly 17.389. All I'm saying is I'm going to make that figure work.
But does that include reducing the width of that back driveway, or it may or may not?
It may or may not, but 17, no.
I just want to know so the board knows what they're
Yes,
acting
well,
on.
Mike, it's not a garage anyway, so I don't need a driveway going back. So if that walkway, let's call it a walkway, 6 feet, which is what the door is, that's more than enough. So if I can make that work, I'd rather see him have his patio and not have unusable driveway that's not really a
I'm
driveway.
not disagreeing with you, I'm just saying, are you committing to a 6-foot wide walkway, whatever it's made of? Or do you may still go back to 12 feet or 10 feet?
No, you're fine, 6 feet is fine.
That's fine.
Okay. You have all the details?
I can repeat them when you're ready.
Go ahead.
So we have a lot coverage variance, assuming we used what was just proposed, a maximum of 17.38. We have the height of the structure at 18.2, and we have the 2 pre-existing variances, the side yard and the undersized lot, with 5 conditions, 1 being removing the circular driveway, number 2 being to...
Well, it's not built, so...
Right, well, remove it from the plans.
Okay.
From the plans.
It's not being approved.
Right. To reduce the proposed, I'm going to call it the rear portion of the driveway, not to exceed 6 feet. without any distinction of what it's made of. That's going to have to fit within your 17.38 or whatever this board signs off on. The third one is to submit the new lot coverage percentages prior to the next hearing when we adopt this, prior to the hearing when we adopt this resolution, which may be about a month from now. So we have the exact number. So if it's less than 17.38 or more, we need to know what exactly it is. Number 4 is to submit an as-built when you're all finished. And number 5 is to work with our board engineer to come up, make a reasonable attempt to come up with green BMPs that may work. And not to say you are not able to do it or can do it, our engineer may require you to have Mr. Siv, who did this plan, as an engineer do it. I'm not sure if he may require that or not, but just keep that in the back of your mind. You may want to talk to him before you make the effort, because they may require Mr. Siv to.
I also work for another engineer that.
Well, any engineer. It can be an engineer, yeah.
Yeah, so he would be more familiar with wetland situations
Fine.
and how to do that.
And Loretta can,
Mr. Siv can do it.
and Loretta can give you the contact information for the board engineer.
Just confirm that before you spend your time.
Is the board engineer is not TM anymore, right? It's
No, it's Bob Bucko of Collier.
So those are the 5 conditions, and the one open one is the lot coverage percentage, which they've asked to go to 17.38 versus 16 or 17.
Mr. Chairman, we just have one. What about the fence? The
Oh,
fence
there's a
that's
fence.
on the neighbor's property?
That has to get moved.
Are you planning on
Yeah, we can't give
keeping
a variance
the wooden
No.
fence that goes
Yeah.
around the property?
Yeah, but
Well,
that's,
there's only a wooden fence in the front and the right side.
Right.
That right
And
side,
the right
right
side is
side
on the
on the
neighbor's
property.
property.
look on the survey map, you have it right on there,
Yeah, so.
right in front of you.
It would, it would just have to,
Look on the,
That would be a 6th condition.
You can see it
You'd have
all
to
running
move your
along
fence
there.
off the neighbor's property.
can you see it?
Not to keep us, but why is that even being discussed if that was already there, existing? And who's to say, I'm just
First
confused
of all,
where the
What
fence is coming
if the
into
neighbor
play.
wants to transfer, then
Yeah.
what do we do?
Wait, whose fence is it?
Peter, I mean, I'll talk to Peter, but I don't know.
Well, it's
Is it
on,
your
if
fence?
it's your fence, it's on his property, something should be done about it.
Yeah,
But who's to say, if it's on his property, who's to say it's on his fence?
what if
Well,
it's-
that's, we don't know, we were assuming it was yours.
yeah, we go off of what's on the survey, so that's why we assumed it would.
It's a couple of feet in there, it's not just 6
So
inches.
to answer the question from a legal perspective, this board, once you need a variance, this board can request any condition it wants. It doesn't have to make that a condition, as you just maybe suggested. Maybe it's just working out with your neighbor, but they have the right to make that a condition if they're going to grant approval. So
Fair enough.
So if a
that's where
letter,
it comes from.
forgive me, but if a letter from the neighbor
Neighbor.
says, I want a fence, or says, I don't want a fence.
Or you're okay with it? I mean, maybe that prior to the next hearing might,
Or it's my fence.
eliminate that condition if the board were so inclined to
Well,
want.
Yeah, but I don't like that, because if the neighbor sells his house tomorrow, and the new person comes and has a survey and sees the fence on his property, he may say, what's this fence on my property? Get it off. So then what did you do? You just delayed it.
Well, then I think you need to determine whose fence it is.
Well, that's it.
That's the predicate.
Whose
issue.
fence is it? If he
Right.
says that's his fence, and you
Then this is
relinquish that, then
a
that's what
non-issue.
we need.
And the condition of approval, can we write it to say that, establish ownership of the fence?
Yeah,
And if the
that's-
fence is,
The
if
applicants.
If it's the applicants, then, bring it into conformance or
Yes.
something? Yeah.
I would say this, it almost certainly looks to be your fence because it's matching the fence that's going around the front of the property. There's chain
But
link.
we don't know.
We're not gonna worry about that.
Well-
Continues onto the left side property.
Yeah, so let Marty word it properly, and that's it.
No problem.
Well, as long as we're talking fences,
We're not gonna, yeah.
I understand.
there's another fence.
That's right, that's fine.
If you have a pool,
Well, it's got, right.
you have to have a fence around the pool.
Well, it's not gonna qualify anyway, it's not high enough.
Right, and that you'll have to deal with
Construction.
the
That's
construction
construction
about.
department, not ours.
Yeah. It only becomes us if it starts showing up on these plans and it starts crossing property lines, but, okay.
So when you do the as-built, it should be noted on there, whoever fence it is.
Will it be resolved way before that?
Yeah, I know, but
Yes.
I'm just telling you.
That possible 6 requirement. of the
Right.
fence.
It should
Right.
be on the survey plan, if it
Yeah.
stays there and
Yeah.
it's the,
Okay, are we clear on what is now being proposed? Or,
Yes. Right. You grant variance.
Okay, so that,
So one other clarification, are we asking them to work with the engineer prior to passing the resolution on the green BMPs, so we know what was actually proposed, or just
no.
prior, as a resolution compliance issue?
Yeah, because we won't know the extent of the green BMPs until we have that final number, so I think, we can approve that, because that's something that would generally be a
Oh, we do
condition.
want the number, the
We
final
do want the final number, yes.
And the
But
fence.
But the, yeah.
ownership.
Yes. Okay. I think we're getting quiet. Must be reaching, had enough. Or however you want to put it. Since there seems to be a lot of consensus here, I'll just go ahead and make a motion that we approve the revised,
The amended.
amended variance request as just discussed by our attorney, with the conditions that he discussed, and to make the approvals as in that of the variance requests as we just enumerated. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that motion.
Any discussion on the motion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Avron?
Yes.
Dr. Blumenthal?
Yes.
Mr. Burkle?
Yes.
Ms. Campus?
Yes.
Dr. Latif?
Yes.
Mr. Luciani?
Yes.
Mr. Urbanitopoulos?
And since I'm last, I make a statement. I will approve it, but I'm reluctant because of the height. I'm still not happy with that, but I'm not going to hold you back because of that.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Motion passed.
Okay. Thank you. It's been a long session. Some people thought it would be quick. It's,
We can make anything long on this board, don't worry.
it's not so much us, it's just the circumstances were complex, and not everybody realized it.
Thank you, Lonnie.
Take care, Lonnie.
Yep. All right, moving on. Item 2. So we have a couple of other applications, which we have resolutions that were submitted to us by Marty.
Goes right on the recycle pile.
Good night, thank you.
Right. Let's take the first one, item 2.
66 Sage Street, Jonas Pettit and Marvin Lorenz, block 5042, lot 9 in the R30 zone. Applicant granted relief for under 25% lot coverage where 15% is permitted. The additional coverage will be used to build a 16 by 32 in-ground pool, along with a 3-foot wide pool patio around the pool. The existing coverage, when the property was purchased, was 19%. No setback relief is required.
Okay, we received the draft resolution from Marty. Are there any additions or comments, corrections to the resolution as submitted? If not, is there a motion to approve the resolution?
I motion to approve the resolution.
The second? Roll call, please.
Dr. Blumenthal?
Yes.
Mr. Burkle?
Yes.
Ms. Campus?
Yes.
Dr. Latif?
Yes.
Mr. Luciani?
Yes.
Mr. Urbanitopoulos?
Yes.
Ms. Perez?
And next, item 3.
3 Ladwood Drive, Jacqueline and Jeffrey Wyndham, block 3.04, lot 3 in the R40A zone. Applicant granted setback relief for a built-in pool. A 10-foot setback is requested where a 25-foot setback is allowed.
Again, we have a draft resolution that was submitted by Marty. Are there any additions or corrections to the proposed resolution? Is there a motion to approve the resolution?
Motion to approve the resolution for 3 Ladwood Drive.
All second it?
Roll call?
Dr. Blumenthal?
Yes.
Mr. Burkle?
Yes.
Dr. Lateef,
Yes.
Mr. Luciani,
Yes,
Mr. Pankratopoulos,
Yes.
and Ms. Perez.
And
Minutes,
minutes of April 6th. Again, we've received draft minutes from our secretary. Are there any additions or corrections to the draft minutes? There are none. Is there a motion to approve?
I motion to approve.
Irfan, for that meeting, you were absent, so you
Can't do it.
I motion to approve the minutes. Jason.
I was there.
is there a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the minutes for May 4th, I have one correction. It lists as present Robert Bucko as board engineer, but I believe it was Robert Mullen that was present that night. This Bucko is still out and will be, he is back at work, but he is not allowed to go out. And that will be true for the rest of, pretty much the rest of the year.
I think you're saying too much.
Anyway, anyway,
Everyone is eligible.
anyway, is there any other additions or corrections? Motion to approve?
Motion.
You were there, you're listed.
I motion to approve.
Well, Valerie, second? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Kate, do you have any other reports for tonight?
No reports for tonight.
Thank you for your part tonight.
Motion to adjourn.
Before we do that.
Second.
Before we do that, we have just want to make sure everybody is aware, we have next meeting is a special meeting on June the 29th at 7 o'clock. It's a Wednesday. With that, there was a motion to adjourn, and a second. Is all in favor? Aye.
Night, everybody.
Good night, and thank you.
In 2 weeks.